Hello, my lovelies. I hope you're all well. So, if you're anything like me, you've been feeling more and more politically homeless lately. According to a survey by Unheard Britain, 58% of voters agree with the statement that there is no political party that they like, with women being the most dissatisfied at 61% to men's 55%, and it's pretty evenly split across the age groups as well. So for myself, I am pretty conservative in my values, but I'm feeling politically homeless because the current Conservative Party are not acting very conservative. Conservatism at its core is small government and low tax. What the current administration, unfortunately, have brought forth is extremely high tax. We're one of the highest taxed countries in the world. And we're at the highest rate of tax for decades, and we also have record inflation as a result of their terrible policies. And they're also imposing more censorship rules and control over our lives, which is anything but conservative. On the other side of the spectrum, you have the Labour Party. We are generally a two-party system in our country, Labour versus Conservatives, and they just sort of take it in turns to rule the country. The Labour Party have been getting more and more extreme on the left side of things. They are large advocates of the gender ideology push, which I am dead against. So I could not in faith ever vote for the Labour Party. And if we look to our friends across the pond in the United States, it seems that they may even be more politically divided than we are over here. There is definitely a two-party system. At least here some independents get voted into Parliament, but very few. But in the States, it's definitely a two-party system with the Democrats versus the Republicans. The Democrats being the more left side of politics, and extreme left at that recently, and the Republicans somewhat on the right, I would say. It depends largely, doesn't it? But then you have people that are more classically liberal, and they're kind of at a loss at the moment on where to go, because if they vote Republican, then they're going to be voting for anti-abortion laws, which they don't necessarily agree with. But if they vote Democrat, then they're voting for these extreme gender ideology and identity politics that they don't agree with. So where are these people supposed to go? What exactly are they supposed to do? In these days of social media as well, you find that most people have lost faith in the mainstream media, especially as we saw during the pandemic, with them just basically saying whatever the government wanted them to say. Our elected officials are supposed to be working for us, but we've seen in recent years that they will actively enact laws that go against the freedoms of their people. If we look at the definition of classic liberalism, it's a branch of liberalism that advocates free market and laissez-faire economics, civil liberties under the rule of law, with special emphasis on individual autonomy, limited government, economic freedom, political freedom, and freedom of speech. There are literally none of the current political parties that fall into this category, I would argue. Now, I will caveat that liberal means something different here in the UK than it does in the US. If you're called a liberal in the US, generally, from what I can gather, they're calling you a crazy lefty. Whereas here in the UK, a liberal just generally means fair to all. I'm also a great believer in free market capitalism. I think it's the best system all round. The problem that we're currently getting, though, is that the government are putting laws in place, and the local councils as well, which are hitting small business the hardest. So it's basically going against free market capitalism, because all that you're left with is these monolith big corporations. And then not to mention that we have these international bodies, unelected bodies, that are trying to get involved in politics in individual countries and undermine the elected officials. Obviously, I cannot agree with this in any way, shape or form, and the current World Health Organization pandemic treaty, which is going through Parliament at the moment, which would give them sweeping powers to enforce lockdowns, as I understand it, obviously I have not read through the entire documents or anything like that, but it's very troubling, to say the least, that these unelected corporations and bodies like the WEF and the WHO would be able to have control in our own countries, where we have not elected them by due process. I would love to know your thoughts. Do you too feel politically homeless? Let me know in the comments and we'll have a little discussion. But I will see you very soon.